for joining me today. Today I'd like to talk to you about the P15. This video is going to be showing you how to start it, run it, what it takes to run it, what to do while you're running it, and what to do once you're done running. That includes your cleanup, short-term storage, and long-term storage. First off, I'd like to say thank you for purchasing one of our machines. It's all U.S. built. If you did bring your owner's manual, that's great, or if you have it nearby, that would be even better, just in case you have any extra questions that I don't have time to answer. To start, this machine, as it shows up, would show up on a pallet to your location unless it was delivered by one of us, and then it would show up very similar to this. On this end, you have your motor and control unit. On this end, you have your rotor and stator output nozzle. Here is your hopper where you would load your material in. And this is your hopper safety grade. Make sure while you're running, for safety reasons, that this does not come off. A lot of guys have a tendency just to set it to the side while they're running. You do not want to do that because it's a very big safety hazard. With the mixing shaft in there, turning, I have seen people stick 2x4s in there and they just get shattered. They stick shovels in there and it'll eat them up like Thanksgiving dinner. Next, I'd like to talk to you about the controls. Okay, leading back in, this is your control unit. Right here is your main on and off. Before you start, this is your power source. You would plug this into your power. It needs to be on a designated circuit where this is the only thing running, because this can overload circuitry if you have other items running on it. On both ends, you have your fan cowlings where your fresh air is sucked in and your air is expelled. Again, this is your main isolator. If you need to, this flips up and it has a locking option. You can't put a lock through here for additional safety. To start your machine, you would simply turn this on. These are your start and stop buttons when your machine is on. So you would push this to off to stop. You'd push this to start. If for forward and reverse, this is the next knob. For forward, it's automatically going to start out in forward, and if you need to go in reverse, you would simply turn that and have to hold it in reverse, or else it will bounce back to forward. Next is your speed knob. It goes from 0 to 100 and then back. When you do first start this machine, this light does come on, the ready light. It will illuminate green. If for some reason your motor gets too hot, your over temp light will then turn on and your machine will shut off. To clear your rotor and stator for cleaning purposes, you would simply need to hold down the temperature override button and hold it in reverse to clear your rotor and stator. And then you would want to, as quickly as possible, clean out your hoses and the material inside the hopper and clean everything out. To turn off, you'd simply, while you're pumping, to turn everything off, you would hit the off button and then you would turn this off. And then you want to wait an additional 10 to 15 minutes before unplugging from the power source, so that way the components inside have time to decharge. Also, there is an amp meter on the control unit. While you are running, you can watch this. If it gets too high, you will overload the motor. There are safety precautions inside of here to protect that. In the front here, you have an attachment for a remote. You simply unplug this, plug in your remote here, lock it back down, and that gives you the ability to run your machine from the hose. So once you get this set and your speed set, you can have the remote at the end of your hose, and no one needs to be here running the machine. They just need to dump material in, and that way the guy at the end of the hose gets to run it. The next part is the rotor and stator and the output assembly. This is your output nozzle where you would hook your 25mm hose in. This is your rotor and stator. This whole assembly comes off with the removal of these two pins. And you can't pull that off and pull your mixing shaft out. To tighten up your rotor and stator, you would want to tighten these three nuts evenly, and that's how you can extend the life of your rotor and stator. Joining me outside now, I will go over how to prepare the pump for pumping and how to use your remote and the items you need to prepare your hoses for running, and then once we go through that, how to clean up properly. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you have a designated circuit to plug your machine in. You can plug your machine in and then go ahead, turn the main on off to the on. If it's functional, the green light right here will turn on. The ammeter will also move a little bit, and you will hear the control unit beep. The next thing you will need is a water source. For this demonstration, this is just a garden hose, and we're only going to be using water if you're going to start pumping. We're not actually going to pump material, so we're just going to use water. You can go ahead and turn the water on. What you want to do is fill the hopper up, maybe 6 to 8 inches in water, depending on how much hose you have, because that allows you to wet your hose. You never want to pump material down a dry hose, because that can cause the moisture in your material to get sucked out, and you'll get plugged hoses. And also by doing this, it wets your rotor and stator and aids in material flow. So once you have about 6 to 8 inches in the hopper, you want to shut your water back off. So coming back in, now that we have water in our hopper, we're ready to prime and wet our rotor and stator. If we have hoses hooked up to the output, this is when we would hook them up to wet those as well. And to start the pump, you would simply hit the green button. It starts turning. And you want to make sure your direction of rotation is correct. And the way you know that, if there's water flowing out of your rotor and stator. And once you have water flowing out of your rotor and stator, you can hook your hoses up with a cam lock fitting and wait until you have water coming out of your hoses. Once you have water coming out of the end of your hoses, disconnect your hoses and keep running your water. Once everything is wet down, stop what you're doing. And then what you want to do is you want to pull the drain plug on the hopper, and where that is located is right here. And it's simply a twist-off cam lock fitting. You take that off, wait for all the hopper to drain, and make sure there's no water remaining in the hopper, because you don't want to have any extra moisture in your mix that might potentially cause your material to fail. So once all your water is drained, you also want to walk your hoses out and get the remaining water out of those as well. So once the water is drained, put this back on, lock it down, and then you're ready to run. And you wouldn't hook your hoses up yet. You would want to dump your material in here and see what kind of moisture that you might lose in your rotor and stator. So simply holding a 5-gallon bucket under the end of the rotor and stator would give you enough area to try and make sure your material still has the right consistency, and that way you can find out if you need to add water or lessen the water. But once you're ready to run, you would hook up your hoses, hit the go button again, set your speed, and this is where the remote that we discussed a second ago would come in. Once you have your speed selection correctly, you would take this. You can walk this cord out to the end of your hose where you might have a spray gun or you might be having a pour application, and this is simply a push up for on and pull down for off. So that gives the ability to where you have your crew guys here barrel mixing, or if you have another mixer here, you have that just dumping material into the pump, and that allows the guy at the end of the hose to stop and start the pump when he needs it to start and stop. So he's got to move to the next section, he can stop it, move the hose, and then start it again to run again. And again, the way to hook this up, it has the plug on one end. You would remove the dummy plug, that slides off, hangs down, and this one plugs in, like so. And then when you're done with the remote, you would simply plug this back in. And that gives you the controls back up here. And before you start pumping, while you're pumping your material into the bucket, you would want to set your speed. And then also, if for some reason you have to stop pumping to relieve the head pressure on the hose, because when you push the stop button, some material will still come out due to the pressure that is built up from the rotor and stator, you would simply hit it in reverse for a couple of turns, and that will relieve your pressure, and that will keep the material from coming out of the end. And again, while you are pumping, you do not want to remove this off your pump. You want to make sure that this is here, all the time, because if that is removed and somebody was by accident to stick their hand in there to move material around, this auger in here will suck your hand in and rip it off. It can break and shatter all of the bones in your hand and in your arm. I have seen 2x4s stuck in here and they get shredded and splintered to pieces. So once you're done with pumping and everything, what you will want to do, disconnect your hose from the end, rinse down your hopper, pump or fill it up with more water, probably 8 to 10 inches of water, put these foam balls that are supplied with the pump into the end of the hose, hook your hose back up, push the go button or the green button, and it will push the foam balls and the remaining material in the hose out the end of the hose. And what you want to do is after you put these down the hose 2 to 3 times, you can then remove your hoses, and then a good spot for these to stay is right in the threading of the rotor and stator. Most guys put them there because that's where they're needed and they don't fall out. After that, what you want to continue to do is fill the water up and run water through your rotor and stator until the water at the end comes out clear. That way you know that all of your water has been, or all the material has been flushed out. And once you're done, if for some reason you need to clean up further than that, you would remove this pen and the one on the opposite side, and you could remove the rotor and stator assembly, the mixing shaft, and that gives you better access. If, for instance, your hose was the plug, you could remove those 2 items, clean up your hopper, and then you could try again putting just water down the hose to force it out. For short-term storage, you would simply just want to take your rotor and stator off and place it by the pump and make sure that everything is clean. And the next time you go to start, when you're doing your water procedure, simply add a little bit of dish soap that gives the rotor and stator a little extra lubrication. So if it has a tough spot in there, it will soften up and allow it to turn the rotor properly. For long-term storage, you will want to take the rotor and stator assembly completely apart with the removal of the 2 bolts at the front of the output nozzle, and take your rotor and stator off completely, and take the rotor out of the stator, so that way nothing is fused together, and also extends the life of the rotor itself in the stator. And then once you're done pumping and everything's been cleaned up, simply turn your machine off. Again, let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes to completely charge down before unplugging it. You want to make sure that you collect all your items, and a good spot to store them is inside the hopper. But you don't want to place any items inside the hopper until the power or control unit has completely powered down and everything is unplugged, and you make sure that it has no power to it. You do not want to stick or put anything inside the hopper while it is still plugged in. So now that our unit is powered down, you would simply unplug it from the power, wrap up your cord however you see fit, and this machine is ready to go. And the ease of use with this machine is simply a one-man procedure. It rolls around very easily. It's small enough it can fit in an elevator if you're doing a job on top of a skyscraper. And one thing I forgot that I do want to touch on is the clean out, or the area where we drain the water. You do want to open that up while you're doing your clean out procedure and make sure there's no material stuck in the clean out in that drain hole, because what has a tendency to happen is your material will find every nook and cranny and it will plug that hole. So the next time you go, if you don't drain that, next time you go to pump and you're doing your startup procedures, you won't be able to get the water out of there without removing the entire rotor and stator assembly. So once that's drained, you clear that hole and it's all cleared up and your entire machine is cleaned up. You're ready to go to the next job site or store this for short-term or long-term assemblies. And again, to recap, to run this machine, you simply need 120 volt power on a designated circuit and your material and a water supply to start up and just to prime your equipment, your hoses, the rotor stator. And if you do store this machine for long term and you do take the rotor out of the stator, the best way to put it back together is put Dawn dish soap or any type of dish soap on the metal part, the rotor, and inside the rubber part, the stator, and simply twist them together. You'll probably need a large crowbar or wrench, but that does aid in putting it back together. So that recaps everything, and again, to summarize, this is a very simple machine. Again, thank you for purchasing it, and I wish the best of luck to you, and that it lasts you as long as it has lasted everybody else. We enjoy building and selling these machines to everybody across the world, and we do pride ourselves in our equipment. So if for any reason you have any problems, don't hesitate to call us. We are more than welcome to answer your call 24/7 and help you with on-site service. Thank you.